already been launched with you this morning. So we will have these. Jeff, could you just turn it down a bit? I think it's a bit loud, thank you. So you will remember that slide here. And that slide was talking about connecting different pieces of the fence, and every one of you basically holds a piece of the fence and honors that and contributes that piece of the fence. And as we have discussed this morning, we will use this evening to basically talk about what we've called the code of conduct. The code of conduct. So just not to avoid any confusion, what we mean by code of conduct is how scientists should behave, right? Not how the models of reality should behave. We are talking about how the scientists should behave, right? So this is how we basically behave and interact. And there are different dimensions. I would want to first of all thank those of you who have contributed to the questionnaire, to the online questionnaire. So we have, some of you might have seen the online questionnaire, some of you might have contributed. So the stuff that we are discussing today is mainly a result of the collection of your input here, right? So it's not just something we've invented, but it's sort of already coming from the audience. So after we had reviewed this input, we basically figured out that there are different topics around this code of conduct. The first topic is to establish a common meaning and understanding of what science actually means and science actually is. Because if every one of you or us would have a different understanding of what science is, then it's going to be difficult to actually collaborate. The second one that we actually found out in the submissions is questions or statements around how to deal with evidence. And here I have to say that where's Paul? Paul? Are you around? Over there. You gave this excellent talk this morning about what are the criteria for evidence, right? So you will see some of those coming up there as well, because it's apparently a very important topic. And then there is the whole topic around collaboration. That is collaboration on an individual level, collaboration within the SSE, collaboration amongst different other organizations. So there are all of these questions basically coming up. And then we have got the Consilience piece, which is pulling the evidence together. And then we have finally got topics around how to communicate what we have found, right? So those are the headlines or the kind of structure that we have distilled from the input that we have got from you during the online survey. Role of the SSE is basically, shall we continue to do what we have done, or shall we probably add a bit to this? And so we will probably come to a short discussion around mission statement if we have got the time for it and if we are still all awake. And that gets me to the panel. And the most important thing is I have been able to select the panel. And guess who I've selected? First person I would like to come on stage is Branda. A warm applause for Branda. Just grab a chair, whichever you like, right?
I can pick anyone I want.
Anyway, you can stay with me if you want. You can actually go as far away as you can. All right. So the second person I'd like to invite onto the stage is Julie Beischel. Warm applause for Julie. Do you see a pattern? All right, that's okay. So the pattern is I can't do without another woman on stage. So I'd like to invite someone who you have not seen on stage and who is close to my heart in terms of what they do. So I'd like to invite Tanya to come on stage, please. Also a warm round of applause for Tanya. Find your place. Thank you. All right. And finally, I would love to have all of you on stage, but the stage is too small for that. So what we have done instead is we have got walking mics, and that is basically Phil there, and probably another colleague of Phil with another microphone, whatever. Oh, Phil has got 2 microphones, and he has got the challenge to basically be in this aisle and in that aisle at the same point in time. But but as everything is just consciousness, just think about it. It will work. I mean, all right. So we have got walking mics. We got rid of the stand because it will be a higher paced kind of engagement, right? So if you have a question or if you want to make a statement, chase Phil around, right? That is the purpose. If you really want to get rid of one of those mics, you might probably kindly ask someone else to. Oh, we've already got a volunteer. Lovely. So, as we have said before, it is meant to be an interactive session. And to be an interactive session, we obviously have got the running mics here, but we have also got a tool in place, which is called Slido. Has any one of you already heard of Slido? All right, that's good. One, perfect. So Slido is basically an interactive tool which allows a live interaction between the audience and the people who are on stage. And what we do here is, it's a polling system. So we actually will put up statements which you can vote upon, where you can say, okay, I like it, or I disagree, or whatever. So this is the kind of interaction, and we will have this then live on stage and on the screen. So whatever you are doing, voting, we will see the results immediately here, obviously in the consolidated way, right? For those of you who are actually going to be critical of the session afterwards, here's the disclaimer. This is not statistically relevant. This is not a scientific setup. And this is the way we do it in business, which is quick and dirty, right? So let's do a warm-up in Slido. Could you just switch to Slido? There has been a long debate about Wi-Fi in here, and I think I basically don't create friends if I tell you how much they quoted us for having Wi-Fi in here. But there was a conscious economic decision because we would want to finance 3 other conferences. Yeah, the idea is to use your phones. Most of you should have phones. So the idea is, if you type in slido.com into your internet browser, I just hand this to you. Thank you.
The room Wi-Fi also works in some cases too.
Yeah, so try, if you have another Wi-Fi connection which works for you, you could try this as well. And we will basically start with a very simple kind of a bit of a game here. So have everyone got this slido.com? If you are on the slide, if you are on that site, all you need to type in is this conference code, which I've made difficult to remember deliberately, right? It's a test. So can I show of hands who has already got access? Yeah, are we getting there? Yeah, we're getting there? All right, okay. So what we are going to do is, I'm going to now activate a first poll. And that one basically says, this is just to get you warmed up, right? There is a first poll which says, there is a statement, Colorado is a lovely place to have our SSE conference. And we've got a first one who is actually already replying. Okay, who's 9 people, 11 people? I mean, come on, there is 8% on, okay, they don't like it that much. I mean, where are we ending up? 19 people so far? Do we have more votes? You see? And actually, if you change your mind, you can also say, no, I dislike it. Even if you have voted for it before. So I see John already trying it. John is very, very hot on that topic. All right? So you see, John has just voted for, he totally dislikes it. This is just to get you familiar with the tool. So you see how this works. There are also different questions here, and that is a type of multiple choice questions. So I show you a multiple choice one, and the multiple choice one is, what is your area of conventional research? And there is a drop down, or there is a choice. So pick what your area of conventional research. All right, so we have got physics here currently, or physics with 44%. Others is always bad if there are so many others, because that means we have done a bad job in defining the criteria. Philosophy is catching up. Religious studies, mathematics. And the nice thing is we get even more votes. We are now with 31 people, so we are getting there. Oh, come on, don't do this to me with the others. that makes my life difficult. Makes my life damn difficult. All right, Phil, I need you. Who has voted for others? Show of hands. All right. Could you just go through the rows and rows and just help me understand who is others? You've just said others. Phil, behind you.
Yeah. Please raise your hand, and I will bring a microphone to you.
Yeah. Just say what others means for you.
Biomedical engineering.
Biomedical engineering. Okay. Yeah.
Parapsychology.
Parapsychology.
I'm not a researcher. So.
Playwriting.
Sorry, say this again. Playwriting. Playwriting.
And
Music.
not doing research.
Not doing research. Oh, this is probably, yeah, we should have got that as a criteria, not doing research. That's the point, yeah. I just wanted to figure out what the missing link was here, right? So that is, but just an increase in philosophy, wherever this came from. So this is just to make you familiar with another type of poll. We still have got one, which is also very interesting, and that is now, what is your main area of anomalies? This is the bloody English word which I can't really pronounce. Anomalies research. And there you need to type something in, so this is a different game. So there we have got dowsing, we have got intent. What else do we have? Oh, right, oh, now it's getting crazy. Quantum physics, energy. You see, and if someone happens to also choose another, oh, psi, look at that. What else do we have? Remote viewing gets more attention. Energy, consciousness. But psi is still a lot of traction there, right? Pretty good, pretty good. And we are we have around 26 active members. We had 31 before. That means 5 of you can't type. But that's okay. So then we have got an interesting question, because what would you expect from that conference? Just type in what you expect from that conference. Transcendence. Who said that? Come on, be brave. Free drinks. Free drinks. Bill, we've got something wrong. Connection. All right, to interact with like-minded individuals. Here we are. You see enlightenment there. We've got enlightenment that would be interesting. If we would run conferences, we could actually charge a huge fee if we promise that they will actually leave the conference enlightened afterwards. That should be really fun. All right, so this is where we are in terms of the. But what you also need to know, if you expect something to get, you also need to be prepared something to give. Right? So what would you contribute to the conference? Financial opportunity. There is someone in the room with money in the pocket. Attention. Canadian maple cookies. I go for one. All right. So guys, you get the idea, right? So that is really what we do. But we have a declining number of participants. So no, it's just when typing, it's lower. So this was just the fun part, and now we really get serious. There is no German mechanical engineer who is just having fun. So, yeah. When I was working with Bill in the preparation for that, I figured out that Bill is very big in statistics, right? So when I suggested that we should use this tool, he said, okay, what is the raw data that we get out of that, right? And is it anonymous? And can we actually track all of that? And we need to establish a baseline so that we can track the progress, right? So what's now happening is not me, it's Bill forcing me to do this. But I go along with that. So what you now got is you got a number of questions. I think it's around 6 or 7 questions, which you should vote upon. Please do this now, and this is really just to establish a kind of baseline, because we would want to see whether there is a change, whether there is a change in your perception, whether there is a change from where you are today, where you will be on Saturday in the afternoon or at the end of the session on Saturday, right? This won't show up at that very moment there, but rest assured, the answers are coming. So I just give you a little bit more time because you just need to rate for those different questions. The question should be on the phone. Yeah? Are the questions on the phone? I just need to check. Yeah? All right, good. Yeah, John, could you help? Oh, that would be lovely. Yeah. This is like in an aircraft, right? Put your own mask on first and then help others who need help. All right. So I'm not going to disclose those votes right now, because this is just to establish a baseline. But just by show of hands, how many people have finished their votes? Oh, okay. A lot of people have finished them, but we still need to start them somewhere. So I will leave this up for the moment, whilst I actually will refer to my beautiful panel.
Our physical appearance is not relevant.
Don't underestimate the physical appearance, I shall say. But you're right in terms of...
You set yourself up for that.
Yeah, I set myself up for that. Yeah, I know this.
You're lucky, Julia, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. The reason why I had you here is I had the pleasure to speak to both of you beforehand, and I would like to thank you for that. And I would like to thank Tanya for approaching me today, so that we actually got the opportunity to have her here. And I'd like to give Tanya first the word, so that you can probably tell a bit about your background, because most of the people don't know you, and that would be interesting to understand what you do and why you are here.
Oh, thank you. My background's quite varied, but I've been in the business realm for about 20 years, initially in fintech, and more recently in what we now call transformational tech, trans tech. I'm not a coder, I'm a product developer. So I take the great ideas and help bring them to market. And right now we're working on a great idea, and we're looking for some scientific brains to put behind it.
So what you see here is, if you remember what we have discussed this morning, there is a department which is the development department, right? We had been talking about the sales and marketing department, which did the market analysis. Then we have been talking about the development department, which basically pulls together the right products. And what Tanya just said is, there needs to be a reliance on the research department, on the science department, right?
Absolutely.
So that is basically why you're here. So we have chosen her because she is actually a real case representative, right? This is not just something we make up. There sits someone who is a representative of a business and who has got certain expectations, right, to an audience such as this. Would you be able to just phrase in 1 or 2 sentences what you would ideally get out of a group like that?
Well, 1 or 2 sentences. Well, I think it draws me back to actually something you said this morning, and it's the reason why I came up to you. And you said, in speaking to the crowd, you said, you have the gold. And what that brought me to is that is so true. You guys have the gold. Well, think of us as the mining company that will help you figure out how to mine it. Because we don't know. We don't know what the great ideas are. But we know that we can help you find them. So it's the relationship building. It's the communication piece behind it. It's the opportunity to sit down with communities like this, like SSC, to understand what your science, what your research is, so that we can, the business community can, one, potentially fund it, and then take it public. And however that might look, and that might not be of interest, and it might be of an amazing interest, but there's such a great opportunity to work together, and I think it's environments like this that give us the opportunity to do that. And so yes, that is one of the reasons I came, but I also came to learn and just to experience it, because I think it's an amazing opportunity to do that too.
And what this tells us is there is an appetite for that, right? I mean, it's not that we had forced them in. They were voluntarily coming here in order to learn more and in order to understand what the key messages are and in order to engage. So there is a real need. There is a real need out there in the market for interaction with communities such as us, right? So this is a tangible thing. So thank you, Tanya, for that. I'd like to ask Julie, what other communities are there which we probably need to engage with? I mean, Tanya had already spoken about business, but what other communities might be around?
My first instinct is to say media, because the public believes what media provides them, the stories, the narratives that media provides, and science isn't going to be able to change that, and I don't think business or marketing necessarily, but we need to be telling people, the public, the right stories.
Yes.
You know, I see so many movies where, oh, it's the sci-fi, and we took the brain and we downloaded it, and then we put it, like, we're not even in here. Like, that's not relevant at all, and that's a silly story. So to sort of get our hands in media and to change the story that people are telling and people are hearing, right?
Yes.
That's how we changed, same-sex marriage. That became acceptable.
Absolutely.
Because people saw it on TV, and transgender lifestyle, not lifestyles, but you know what I mean.
So media is big on your list, right?
Let's talk about
Absolutely.
psi and non-local consciousness in the media.
Yeah. So we have got business and media. What are other ideas? What are other what we could call stakeholders? What are other important communities which might be interested in what we are doing here? Education. It's a big thing in education, right? I mean, yeah. Sorry. Healthcare. Experience. Sorry, could you just, I can't hear, I'm sorry.
People who have psi experience.
Oh, sorry, people who have got psi experience. Yes, now I got you. Okay, that's great. So you mean to basically give them a kind of a support or a backup that they are not just mad. I mean, in terms of a community. Yeah, this is a kind of home, right? A belonging, feeling of a belonging. Great. Is there another vote here?
Hi, my name is Farusha, and for the past 4 years, I have been hosting a podcast called Shattered Reality Podcast, which deals with many aspects of the anomalous, many of the things that we spoke about here today and yesterday. There are 88 podcasts available 24/7 on the internet. This is totally non-commercial. There are no business people involved, and it's free to the public. And I've tried to ask intelligent questions of intelligent people, 2 of whom are on the stage with you right now. And
you don't talk about me, right?
No, not you. Not yet, maybe someday. But so the purpose of this is to provide a service free of any charge to anyone who wants to express some interesting ideas about psi phenomena, the anomalous, and consciousness. I do this basically all by myself, except for the gentleman who records this. If anybody would like to get involved and help me in any way with publicizing this, it's nonprofit. I make no profit. I spend money on it, okay?
Thank you.
FYI. Excuse me.
Yeah,
Shattered Reality Podcast.wordpress.com. There's a big pink, there's a big sign outside. There are pink cards involved that you can take one with you. This is not a commercial.
No, this is great, because I think it's very important to also distinguish what Julia has said. Julia has, I think you have referred to media as sort of the professional media, the film industry, and these kind of groups, right? And what you are talking is basically the lay audience. I mean, the average person, right? And there is another channel there. There are podcasts, for example, as you run them. Thank you for this contribution. This is really good.
So hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm really loud.
Yeah.
We'll pretend I'm holding the mic.
That's good.
So in terms of communities that would be of interest, now it's too late now, I'm just going to scream. The communities, both
No, it's also for the recording. It's for the recording. It's better.
Hello.
Hello.
In terms of the communities, the two last examples are actually really great ones to focus on in all of these communities. But the healthcare and education, there is two communities really that we're talking about in each case. There is the business of healthcare, who probably really doesn't want to hear anything about this. And then there's the essence of healthcare that really needs to hear about it. And education, the same way.
Yeah.
Education desperately needs this.
Yeah.
The business of education desperately does not want to hear about this. So, you know, in all of these communities, it's something to think about as we identify those communities and who to reach out to. And by all means, we should be doing this, but to move forward deliberately and carefully and sensibly is an important piece of this, I think.
Yes, and in business language, we would call it a communication strategy or communication plan, basically, right? So you define who to speak to and who should basically get what message. Jörg.
I'd just like to amplify a little bit about Jeff's comments on the business of healthcare by sharing something that I learned from a friend of mine who is an MD and a professor. One of her class exercises for med students divides everybody up into divides the class up into 3 groups, and all of them have the same assignment: design the ideal properties for the perfect weight loss drug. And then she gives them the kicker: you guys design the perfect weight loss drug from the viewpoint of the patient. You guys design it from the viewpoint of the doctor. You guys design it from the viewpoint of a pharmaceutical company.
Perfect, yeah. Yeah, makes a lot of sense, yeah. This is tailored communication because we need to understand our stakeholders, right? So I don't want to dive deeper in here, but what we see is we have got business, we have got media, and we have got a lot of other stakeholders which actually have an interest and vital interest in what we can produce collectively out of the SSE and similar organizations, right? So there is a real market there. But I'd like to draw to you, Brenda, to probably help us to understand how we could communicate, how we should communicate. So what should we do? What is the language we should use?
Well, I think you just said the magic word, language. We have a tendency in, not as much within this community, but certainly within the scientific and academic and business communities and et cetera, of these parochial languages. I can recall when I first started graduate school, I went to a seminar probably the second week, and I was trying to figure out what they were talking about. And it hit me right then and there that this isn't about education. This is about learning the proper language that would identify me as a member of this community so that I can publish, I can make presentations, but I can be recognized.
Yes.
And it's part of building fences, but I think in a non-productive way. We tend to separate ourselves out by the language we use, and we take pride in having very specialized languages for this field, for that field, and this works against real communication or consilience. I think we have to be giving thought about meaning, try to understand what somebody else is saying in their particular jargon and how that relates to my particular jargon, and trying to find common languages that would enable us to communicate with the broader society. And now we're back to the media, or the marketing. But if science is going to contribute something that is going to be meaningful to the larger community, or that's going to be marketable to the corporate community, it has to be understandable.
Yes.
And not this sort of insular, secret coded languages that many academics and scientists pride themselves on. That also applies within the academic world, of course. you know, we need to start looking at interdisciplinary communication.
Interesting.
And I'm not talking about a theoretical physicist taking an experimental physicist out to lunch every 6 months. I'm talking about a theoretical physicist taking a philosopher out to lunch, or a literature major, or a poet. And let me add to that is I think we need to recognize the important role of the arts as a
Got musicians here.
yes, as a vehicle of communication.
Yeah.
Because through the arts we can communicate, we can find languages that transcend the specializations. I am a very big fan of metaphor. I think metaphor is one of the most critical aspects of real communication. In fact, I think ultimately all communication is metaphor, because we are describing something in language, and usually we can't describe it directly. We can only say this is like that, or this reminds me of. So I think language is really a vital aspect of where we need to go.
Yes.
And
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a particular problem in this field because the language that we have often invokes like an emotional response. Like, you know, if you say telepathy, clairvoyance to people, like some people will make a face. No one ever made that face to me when I said vascular endothelial growth factor. And so
Sorry.
it's okay. That was the face. But so there is an established language, and we do have to use it. But unfortunately, that language makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So that's a hurdle that we have to deal with.
Yeah. Totally agree.
to that point, in our own research program, we discovered very early on that if we use the word psychic phenomena or parapsychology,
Yeah.
people,
Shutters.
so we started talking about consciousness-related anomalies. And I used to have a lot of fun when I would meet some mainstream scientist who would say, "And what do you do, young lady?" And I'll say, "Oh, I'm in human factors engineering." "Oh, really? What sort of do you, I mean, you know," and we'd go on. "Well, I'm looking into human-machine interactions." And, "Oh, you know, well, tell me more." Well, by the time we got another layer or two along, they'd get this look.
Yeah.
Is she talking about what I think she... But, you know, I did get in there before he shut down. And so we need to have the insular language among ourselves or between ourselves, but we also have to be able to generalize it to a broader community. And we also have to be able to have fun with people
Yeah.
like that.
Definitely. And I think that comes back to the what John was saying about the community of Psi experiencers, because sometimes the language doesn't matter. You can say, "Oh, well, you know how like a mom can know that her kid got in a car accident all the way across the country," and people go, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you don't, it doesn't ever need
Yeah.
the language because they know what that phenomenon is.
That's true.
And stories, that's another way that getting through to people are
Yeah.
stories, and that does come back to the media, I guess.
Yeah.
And to metaphor.
Yeah, it's a metaphor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tanya, what would be the language that you, as a representative of the business world, would understand? I mean, how should it sound that you understand it?
It's a really tough question, and I don't actually have an answer. I think that business is in a similar position. We have our own language. We talk about ROI, we talk about marketing, we talk about silos, and none of those things are, you know, jargon words for academia. So it's I actually brought the communication piece up earlier. It's a huge issue. How we communicate together, I think, isn't so much about creating a shared language as just working on it. We just have to start working on it. We have to start trying and asking a lot of questions. I ask a lot of questions, especially in a place like this where I know very little about what is happening. So I have to ask a lot of questions. And I think one of the things I come up against when I'm talking to PhDs and scientists often is, as a business person, it's, "Oh, stop asking me questions." And that's difficult because we don't know. So have a little bit of compassion for us and allow us to ask questions, and then and then we get and then we can work towards it. And by all means, ask us questions, and that's what you do in science. You ask questions. So I think that would probably be a good place to start.
Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
just opening up the questions.
Yeah.
In the area of communications, I think one thing that SSE can do, and does do very well, is to cross the disciplinary barriers and language barriers, because there's people here with so many different interests.
We've just seen this, right? I mean, so
And-
many different backgrounds here, yeah?
And I know that I have learned a lot over the years listening to people who are coming from a different field or a different perspective than I
Absolutely.
have.
Yeah.
And, but we have to listen to each other. And this is something that we already do. And perhaps there's some way we can promote this more assertively.
Thank you.
So
Are the-
I have some
Yeah.
experience with this language barrier. So psychology is my main interest, and I work a lot with exploring subconscious and with hypnosis. I call the entire body of that work consciousness alchemy, to include things like yoga as well as hypnosis. They are things where you're changing the way your perspective works. And I've been very frustrated because the terminologies from, Jungian terminology to Sanskrit in yoga, it's like we're talking about the same stuff, but we're using different words. So it's very frustrating. So I actually maintain a glossary on my website. I call it the Consciousness Alchemy Glossary. The page goes on a long time, but if you bear with the page and read it, it's basically like reading a glossary of all of these psychology terms that I've been collecting from places like Jung and like yoga and like other places, in order to have a reference so that when I write an article about these concepts, I can actually link to the specific word in the glossary, and you'll go right to that part of the page and you can read the definition and then continue reading the article without me having to redefine what I mean by, let's say, Tana, which is a Sanskrit word, every time that I use it.
I think this is great. I mean, you probably know the phenomena that you speak to someone and you agree verbally, but you have been talking about different things, right? I mean, these things happen, and I think the glossary is a very good example. I mean, this is like...
So just in conclusion, basically, I think that we need to spend more time figuring out how we're talking about the same thing and adopting other people's words. So stop inventing a new word every time you come up with a new concept, and just consider that maybe somebody else had this concept, and try to stretch your mind and try to figure out how the two concepts are the same, instead of saying, oh, mine's different, and making a new word.
Yeah, and there is something called consilience. I don't know whether you've heard the word before. And it makes an awful lot of sense if we have the same language, if we talk about the same things.
So one other dimension of this is in addition to asking how our language affects, or what's the right language to positively and effectively affect the world around us, is to look at our own behaviors in our own language as we're using it, even within our own dialects. And I mean dialect in the sense that the panel just described it. And I'll give you an example. How many times have you heard somebody talk about the problem of energy, or the problem of kinetic energy? You don't hear that phrase terribly much. How many times do you hear people talk about the problem of consciousness? Why is that a problem, right? But think about it as you're asking your own questions. I need to explain consciousness. I heard this a lot. I don't ever hear anybody saying, I need to explain this chair. Why? So as we're using our own language, keep in mind that those words affect our own selves, right? So the language is both externally facing, per your question, but it also has an internal effect.
Yeah.
It forms our own thinking. And the only thing you can do about that is, of course, be conscious of it. Oh, there's the word again. But, do your best to do so. And I think that will help in all these communication issues that everybody else has been talking about.
Yeah.
So just a thought to share.
Totally agree. One other thing when I just was listening to you, which came to my mind, is that in different languages or different communities have got sometimes a more detailed vocabulary. I mean, take for example the word snow. We talk about snow, but if you actually go to Alaska, to some of the people living there, they probably have got 20 to 30 different types of snow which they can distinguish. And only when you have got 20 to 30 different types of snow that you can distinguish, you can actually start sort of see correlations and these kind of things. We just talk snow. I mean, this is like we talk consciousness, while it's probably in the Eastern traditions, the Vedic traditions also, there are different types of consciousness, just in terms of terminology available, right? So I think this language thing, this communication thing, is something where we need to be extremely careful that we don't just fall into traps which we haven't seen before, right?
Ooh, I got one more.
Sorry?
I got one more thing.
Yeah,
You got bonus too.
So do I.
Okay.
Oh,
I've got the mic.
Yeah.
keep it. Keep it.
I've got it. One of the jobs that I do in the last, or have been doing in the last few years, is editing books. And I find that a fascinating opportunity to familiarize myself with different languages that are addressing similar topics. We have published 2 anthologies in which we picked a topic, and then we invited, 14 or 15 people from different disciplines, from different countries, and from different, personal perspectives to submit an essay or a chapter. And I then have the opportunity to sit there and read all of these and say, my God, they're all saying the same thing, but they're saying it in totally different ways. And in the process of doing the editing, I find this very educational. I am learning. So maybe we need to listen to or read about or familiarize ourselves with languages other than our own to become intellectually multilingual.
Before you go, can I just add something to that particular case? Because it just came to my mind, talking about the same thing but using a different language. I mean, what popped up in my mind is we have got wars based on religious conflicts. But if you really look into the essence, I'm not postulating this, but I think, this is my gut feeling, that the essence of the message is probably similar, right? But we are using different languages, and I'm just bringing this example up as it can even get so severe as there are wars around that, right? If we don't get that right. Sorry.
2 things. One, just the simple naming of things can sort of depathologize it when people know, like if psychological disorders, you can go, oh, there's a name for that. It's so common, they named it. I'm not all on my own for this. So when we have all these, glossaries of things that we can show people, like, no, that thing that happened to you, it's called this, then people go, oh, it's real what happened to me. And then the other thing I was going to say was having a language to describe things can literally change perception. I cite the study all the time where they took people taking a wine tasting class, and they were novices, and they gave them 3 glasses of wine. They said, taste these, is this the same wine or different wine? They said, that's all the same. And then over the course of the class, they learned words like woody and fruity, and by the end of the class, they could literally taste the difference between the wines just by learning the terminology.
True.
So it truly can change our perception of the world, knowing these terms.
Yes. So there are a lot of tricks we can apply, I think, what we get out of that.
My colleague, Roger Nelson, used to carry around these little business cards that read, "Language bewitches intelligence." I don't know if you still
have them?
Do
you still
but
carry them? You still have them. All right. Okay.
That's
Good.
a wonderful statement.
All right. So let's close this conversation here around language and communication. I think what appears to be here is that this is really important that we think about, that we think who we talk to and how we talk to these people. What is the language that we actually use? I would want to get you again involved in the next poll. So I'm going to release a next one, which is just around the area of what is our understanding of science. So these are actually coming from you, right? We haven't invented them, but please vote on those kind of things. So what do you think about that? So here we are. We have got.
I know. Left out.
Would you agree with that statement? So we've got 6 people. Yeah, there is. We have got no one disagreeing. I need to disclose something to you. When Bill and I were talking about that and going through those statements, Bill said, if there are statements where anyone disagrees, we should have a serious conversation whether he should stay within the SSE or not. No, but this is interesting. You see, we have a strong support for that one. I'm going to go to the next vote here, to the next poll, which is again coming from one of you, basically. So it says, truth requires letting go of individuality, separation, belief, dogma, protection, and ownership of knowledge. Would you agree or would you disagree with that? Again, so far, oh, we have got a slight disagreement there, even a bigger disagreement. All right, you see, this is a more diverse response here. I'm waiting for a couple of more votes. So this is not that obvious, right? So I'm just wondering, what is the difference here? I mean, is it where does it come from? Why is there not so much of a support there? Can someone just, out of intuition, why is there less of an agreement here? The microphone is coming.
Well, I teach sociology of knowledge, and I think the problem is probably that we know that that's not what actually happens, and that science is not objective, even though it's a nice goal. We would like science to be objective, and so would I. I'm sort of a moderate on this issue, but actually knowledge is socially constructed. So that I think one reason why people might be hesitant is that they know that. They know that it's grounded in social construction.
Mm-hmm. Okay. True, yeah. Yeah, okay.
I'd like to ask a supplementary question. On a scale of 1 to 37 currently, how many definitions of truth do we think we have in this room?
And again, it's you allude to a language thing again, right? It's a definition thing, it's a glossary thing again.
So I would actually have a definition of truth that goes that the total objective truth is the sum of all subjective truths.
Okay, good. Let's. Oh, there is an. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
how can you let go of individuality? Is it even possible? That's why I have an objection.
Okay. You see, so this is. Sorry, York, you want?
On the subject of truth, which we've been discussing, I just wanted to throw out a thought that came from a book on philosophy I read a while ago. What difference is there between saying X is true and simply saying X?
All right. This is the part where the science community is basically more advanced than the engineers from Germany. But I think about this. Sorry, we can. Yeah, there is another one.
One man's truth is another person's propaganda.
One man's truth is another person's propaganda. Wow, strong. All right. So again, here we see these kind of things. I'm going to just go to the next poll because we have got a couple.
Can I bring just up one other thought? Just because
where,
it's.
Where are you?
Sorry, right here. I just want to bring up a different point.
Sorry.
I'm not,
yes. Oh,
I'm intellectually not tied to one way or the other, but I think the point that someone's trying to get across here is, from my understanding in the old, like maybe back in Greek times, when someone had an idea, it was a compliment for someone to take your idea and build upon it. That was considered a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I feel in modern society, to a particular degree, the whole point is about, let me get my idea, let me monetize it, and if you think I'm going to let you touch my idea, whether it's adjusted or something like that, I will sue you out of existence, or I'll basically trample you down, because I've got my idea, I'm going to wield it, and I'm not letting it get changed. So I think just throwing that on there, I think all the things that people said are totally legitimate points, but I kind of feel like that's maybe some part of where this statement is coming from. And with that, I kind of agree with where I think maybe they're coming from.
Yeah, so there is a bit of a protectionism that we are talking about right now. And this just reminds me, when we do communication trainings with senior executives, we tend to use the yes, but, right? I hear you, yes, but. And a colleague of mine has just got a brilliant thing around the yes, buts. He says every yes, but is a declaration of war. Think about this. It's true. And think about how often we use yes, buts. every single yes but is a declaration of war. All right, let's just go to the next poll. The next poll basically says, incorporate all existing evidence without excluding inconvenient outliers. I would expect that we see yeah, sorry. This is bad. Sorry, I hadn't thought about this. So the question is incorporate all, the statement is incorporate all existing evidence without excluding inconvenient outliers. So this is not just hiding some of the stuff.
So we realize we're all at a business, that means there's no anomalies.
Yeah. So we have a couple of people basically who are still in agreement with 64%, which is okay. Just out of timing issues, I'm just running through the next one here.
Just before you do, just a
Sorry.
quick anecdote. We had written a book called Margins of Reality, and my colleague and I had a great deal of difficulty figuring out how to end it. And there was one aspect of it that we wanted to end up saying something like, everything in this book may be wrong. But instead we told this story about this king who sent his wise men out to come back and summarize all the wisdom of the world in one word. And
Okay.
it took them a long time, but they finally returned, and the king said, well, you know, what have you got? And they said, perhaps.
Very good. No, true indeed. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, we have already. I think I already activated the new one. The new one said accept anomalies. Got it right? Accept anomalies as indicative current limitations on our understanding, as opposed to reasons for dismissal of anomalies. I think we have a pretty strong explicit voting there as well. Keep on moving. There is a next one which basically says, don't contradict existing theories without significant justification. Oh, sorry, I should switch on the results that you see it. Oh, here is something happening. Oh, a lot of movement, you can't see it. Sorry, this is like...
We can see the bars.
Oh, you could see the bars? Is this helpful if I just put this? All right, yeah, this is right. So this is very indifferent here, right?
I can see the bar graph.
So we have got the challengers here in the room who basically support the idea, and we have got the defenders in the room.
I think one of the problems with this question is what does significant mean in this context?
Okay, that could be the case. Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's an interesting thing. Yeah.
What kind of theories are you talking about?
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell because I haven't come up with these questions, but this is, or with these statements, but...
Well, but I mean, you know, the theory could be, you know, some racist nonsense, or it could be something that's scientifically sound.
Yeah.
I don't think we can assume that we're dealing with something that is carefully thought out or evidence-based necessarily.
I think this is a very good point because we start with base assumptions, right? I'm picking up on your word of assumption here. That what is our base assumption if we meet someone? What is the base assumption if we actually look at some scientific reports? Do we trust that person? Do we trust that that is correct? Or are we more skeptical about it? I think this is an important thing. So let's just keep on running here. I think that should be a very easy one. Interdisciplinary collaboration. We've been talking about this. We've been saying that Consilience is basically based around that. I think there is hardly any disagreement. Good. I think this next one might be interesting. It says, integrating science, technology, and humanities with all the other related sciences. I think the particular tension is around humanities, isn't it?
I am going to refuse to answer this question because it broke my brain to think about integrating science with all other sciences.
Yeah, there is a
That's
closed
what I
loop.
said.
There is a closed loop here. This is just for it's good, yeah, for all of the IT guys amongst us. This is a nice one here. Let's go for that one. Combine subjective and objective measures of consciousness. So this is interesting because I have got no idea what you will. All right, so most of you agree. There is one disagreement, one strong disagreement probably, or probably even more. It's getting less. I mean, you don't need to, if you are not feeling comfortable, but it's an open question. Is there someone willing who has voted against that, just to sort of say why you've voted against it, just in case you want to? You don't have to disclose yourself. All right, okay, fair enough.
I'll say I didn't vote, but I'm not sure what combine means. I'm not sure what it means to combine subjective and objective, but then I would also argue that I would enjoy a debate on the nature of how you draw the line between subjective and objective. So I could have an interesting discussion on that as well.
Yeah, I think that's true.
So I answered that one with a 1, because in my world, there is no such thing as objectivity.
Yeah. So again, we have got different worldviews, different perspectives. I think you say it's difficult to basically draw a border between them. You say in your world there isn't objectivity at all, right? So again, this is also something which we need to take into account when we talk about.
Could I make a comment on that one? I think the word combine is confusing, and the question implies a duality.
Mm-hmm.
It implies it's either or.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a more productive approach is to take a complementary one, where you say the subjective perspective and an objective perspective are just two different ways of looking at the same thing.
Yes.
So one doesn't have to combine them. One simply has to recognize that they are two valid approaches. Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to say something, or you just?
I'm just holding it because I'm in the middle.
Ah, okay. Oh, I thought you would want to take it away from her. Good. So the next one which we have got here says.
I was just going to give you an example on the last one that I just happened to think about. So you're a doctor maybe, and you've got all your instruments, you're checking with the patient, you know the information about their blood or what the x-rays show and so on. But wouldn't you want to ask them how they feel subjectively? I mean, I think that's an example of the way that you would want to combine subjective and objective types.
No, very interesting. Yeah, it's a good. Yeah, leverage both. Yeah. Yeah. All right, good. The next one which we have got here on the list is collaborate and drive Consilience together with other organizations. I mean, there is just another organization named here, but is it something which we regard as valuable to not just stay within the SSE, but to draw conclusions and Consilience across different organizations is the question. And I think we have got a pretty strong vote in the positive direction. All right, still changing slightly. All right.
Let me make a comment on that one. I am really delighted by the fact that we have 3 female commentators sitting up here, and I find myself thinking how, there's academia tends to be predominantly patriarchal and masculine, and as such, there is a tendency for it to become very territorial.
Mm-hmm.
And very protective of its own field, of its own work, and its own publications, its own whatever. And yet I find, there's I don't know if we're an example, we haven't been living together long enough, but I think there's a tendency for women to be more inclined to collaborate, to share information, or to cross those boundaries than. Again, that's my experience.
Yeah.
Is that the same in business?
Well, absolutely. I mean, business is absolutely a patriarchal community. I'm absolutely the oddball in pretty much every meeting I go to. But I think the one thing that I find is, for myself and my female counterparts, we're far more willing to say we don't know. Please help.
Mm-hmm.
than my male counterparts. And I think that's something that with more women in the business place is a great advantage for where we are today.
This just reminds me of another concept which we often teach when we do executive classes, and that's the difference between being a knower and a learner. A knower is someone who actually knows, and a learner is someone who actually is interested in learning more things. And I think we have the tendency, naturally, and I'm talking about myself, at least, to be a knower instead of a learner. And it takes a real effort to switch the mindset into a learner's attitude sometimes, right? So let me just go through the next one, which we have here at hand. Information should be released in common terms so the general public can benefit from consilience. That's basically what we have been talking about, right? Yeah, I say it one more time for you. Information should be released in common terms so the general public can benefit from consilience. And this is interesting because we have got 70% currently around there with 35, 38 votes. So this is strong because this is a question which basically picks up what we had discussed before around language, right? This is really important, and it's good that we actually see this here in the votes as well. I'm launching the next vote, which says productive use of metaphor in communication and scientific principles. Who does that come from? Yeah, you heard that before, right? I think I remember that was from you. So if you want to disagree with Branda, do it now. Right? Okay, I'm going to go to the next one. It says data must be shared in a common forum without the profit motive. Without a profit motive. Oh, this is interesting. So there seems to be it's not that clear, right? It's where does this uncertainty come from? Here's a statement where the uncertainty may come from.
Yeah, I think this conflates two principles. One is that the ethos of science is that knowledge should be shared without interest, but there's also intellectual property. So they're two competing values. Mm-hmm. But in terms of pure science, you're supposed to share.
Okay, got that. Yeah, yeah. All right. The next one we have got, and we are on the finishing line about that. Academia should be a large part of this effort, particularly with the inquisitive and creative minds of our young people. This is a good question. I don't know where academia starts. I sometimes felt that when my kids were small, they were more clever than I was. So, but we have a sort of relatively strong vote there. Again, I'm just running through this because now that we've got you there. All R&D needs to be an interdisciplinary approach in order to make significant discoveries and accomplishments. All R&D needs to be an interdisciplinary approach. Oh, here we also got, oh, look at that. There is disagreement here. So it's probably because of the word all? Yeah, I was guessing so, right? So this is like, it's the wording. And again, we need to be careful. Pardon me? Language matters, absolutely. Language matters. So it's really individual words which could actually make or break it, right? So only 2 to go. Plurality. How do you pronounce that?
That's it.
Yeah, plurality of methods and approaches. So it's a non-reductive. Bad question. Whoever raised that, whoever brought that statement up, leave the room. Bad. Damn. Come on, I mean, awful. All right, next one, last one. Any model, point of view, worldview is an interpretation. Wow, 85% here. Strong, very strong. All right. I'd like to thank you for that part of the session. And I would just want to dedicate the last couple of minutes to really draw conclusions on what the SSE role would actually be in that context of what we have just discussed. And what I have done is, or what we have done collectively, basically, we have put together a couple of questions around the mission statement of the SSE, if you like, right? So the first one, which we would want to activate as a poll, which says, should the SSE contribute to define the ring fence for scientifically plausible models of reality? Should the SSE contribute to define the ring fence for scientifically plausible models of reality? We have got an 88% agreement to that, 91% agreement at that very moment. Now we are down to 88. All right, so a big majority says that the SSE should contribute to developing that ring fence. Can I just, again, this is just on a voluntary basis, but would those people who have disagreed to that, would you probably give a reason why you disagreed, if there is anyone wanting to share this? Okay, we have Annalisa here. Could you just get the mic to Annalisa?
Being on the wrong end of scientific gatekeeping for some time, I'm disinclined to impose that on others.
Okay. Okay. Good, thank you. Oh, yeah, we've got another one, yeah?
I didn't vote. I haven't a clue what you mean by ring fence.
All right, okay. Yeah, ring fence in terms of defining the area in which the model. I take your point. So that's good. The next one is also referring to the ring fencing, so you might not vote there either. But it basically says it's not just help to define it, but should the SSE be a custodian of the ring fence for all scientifically plausible models of reality? No. No. So there is no ambition in the room that the SSE should be the custodian. You would want to contribute to it. A few yeses, okay. But there is a difference. There is a will within this room to contribute, but it's not to be regarded as the custodian. Yeah? Sorry, say that
again.
again.
Was the all a problem again for others?
So, oh, the all. Okay, I got you. So whether the all, for all, yeah. Is it the point? Is it the all?
From my point of view, and which is a lay point of view, not being a scientist, but I think that reality is very movable. It's very amorphous. And I don't know if there is any plausible model of reality at all. I mean, it's very confusing to me. I think reality is incredibly subjective, and sometimes several people might sort of agree on a reality, and then it might become the prevailing model, but that doesn't mean much in the long run. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We've got another one here.
So a little bit aside, but I want to follow up on that last comment, which started with, I'm not a scientist, and then proceeded to describe something that was remarkably scientifically minded. So, there's an interesting question that comes up, whether or not a scientist is somebody with a degree in a scientific discipline, or whether somebody is a scientist by nature. And one thing that we ought to think about in this society, and by society I literally mean SSE society, is where we're going to define that role and who we consider to be scientists. I obviously, in bringing up the point, would argue that Anybody who's scientifically minded, who thinks that way, and I would also probably argue that it's a lot of people, probably should be considered that way, regardless of what their specific credentials are.
Thank you. Yeah. So
that last comment raises, I think, a very profound point.
All right.
That SSE should consider, and I think there is a broad misunderstanding of the difference between science and the scientific method. There's a lot of people who think that science is a body of knowledge that is, carved in stone, rather than a process of acquiring knowledge. In the former case, there are people who claim they have credentials. I am a scientist, I have a specialization, a training. On the other hand, it's I am somebody who, you were talking about the learners and the knowers.
Yeah.
And it is and I think that distinction separates science from scientism.
Yes.
Or science as an intellectual pursuit versus science as a body of knowledge that kind of gets rammed down everybody's throat.
I see what you mean. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, thank you for the comment. Do you just hold it, or do you want to say something? Okay.
Just hold, I'm just in the middle.
All right. Yeah. Sorry. I mean, someone needed to be there. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's over. I realize that in the real world,
could you just hold the mic a bit closer to you? Just
in the real world, things get a little bit trickier than this. I mean, I spent 10 years as the editor of JSE, and it's one thing to give a venue for discussion of ideas that would challenge the current paradigms, or as we've been discussing. On the other hand, we got some real junk that came in that is just purely nonsense stuff. I mean, there's no way to justify it. And in fact, perhaps York Dobbins remembers one example of this, a meeting where the post paper was given by someone who was spinning a top around and around, and wanted to demonstrate how that would just fly off radially, whereas in fact, if you've got something spinning around and you cut the string, it'll go off tangentially. Everybody knows that. It's something that you got up on the stage and you proved with your yo-yo, whatever you had in your hands. Anyway, my point is that it's one thing to consider ideas that come from someone that at least knows what they're talking about, but to have a new idea being put forward by someone who doesn't know the existing physics, can be a total waste of time, because you have to know what it is that you're rejecting, be competent in that before you expect other people to believe something that is totally nonsense, probably.
Yeah.
Do you happen to remember that, York?
Yeah. Yeah. So we have another one over here.
Well, as a start to the communication that we've been speaking of, there's been like 5 individuals here during the course of today who have referenced their own work, their own web pages, their own collaborations. How do we get in touch with them? I mean, is there going to be a list posted? I mean, how do we communicate just within our own group here?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know whether there are structures. I mean, I'm totally new to the organization. I don't know whether you have got the means established already, but probably we should in the future. So there is a last yes or no question here, and then so should the SSE officially endorse certain models of reality? Should the SSE officially endorse certain models of reality? So we have got so far a relatively clear vote for no. The last 3 votes for today are around the mission statement of the SSE, and I've discussed this with the program committee and with Bill in particular around what the mission statement actually is, and that is the baseline. That is what is currently assumed to be the mission statement. It says, the Society for Scientific Exploration, SSE, provides a critical forum for sharing original research into anomalies and unconventional topics. So in how far do you basically buy into this? In how far do you agree to that? Okay, so we've got a pretty strong support of that, it seems. That's good. So now take that statement, and now we have added something. So that remains the same. So we are not suggesting that we take anything away from what you have done before, but we are now adding to that. And what we add, basically, is we add the part that we draw relevant conclusions from converging evidence. So we are not just discussing or providing a critical forum, but we are now, we could also draw relevant conclusions from converging evidence. What is the one single word for that? Consilience, right? But as consilience is not really something that people understand, so. Okay, this is interesting. So there seems to be a positive attitude to also go for this consilience aspect in the future, right? All right. So let me now even stretch you a bit further. So all of what is given there remains there, right? So it is about a critical forum for sharing information as well as driving consilience. So that stays there, and we are just adding a last thing to that, which basically says, so all of what we've got, and communicate those insights in common terms to the general public. So we are now adding the communication part. We had the sharing, we were drawing the conclusions, but now we actively communicate. Here we are. So we have, again, a relatively positive notion here as well. So I think this is an interesting insight, at least from my point of view, because it seems that there is a broad majority in the room who basically said that might be a better or a future statement as a mission statement for the SSE. And we therefore recognize that we would acknowledge the fact that we share information around research data, and we would critically review this, that is fine, but we add two things. We add the consilience, we drive conclusions out of that, and then we would also publicly communicate these conclusions in a language which is actually appropriate. Right? We've got a statement here.
When we did the question about common language, I actually voted against that. But I can align with this because of the term general public. Within this forum, within this group, I think it is totally appropriate for us to speak in the jargon that
Yeah.
we're used to. In fact, I think we should. However, the general public doesn't know those terms, and I'm not saying we water it down, but it needs to be in terms that a non-scientific person, a business person or a media person can understand so they don't misquote us and then it becomes woo-woo.
Yes, I think this is a very, very good remark. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just as a side note, you know that I'm not a native speaker in English, but we had a distinction between, when I was working in the UK, between British English and international English, right? So this was, sorry, do you want to go? Oh, sorry, have you already, yeah, there is, it's coming.
So, and again, just for clarity of language here, so the original statement is a forum for the sharing of the research, sharing being the relevant component here. Then the next piece is drawing relevant conclusions. Now, it's not clear who's the actor in this part. Are the members drawing relevant conclusions and presenting their conclusions as they present their research findings? Or is the society itself drawing relevant conclusions and communicating those?
Yeah.
And so, and again,
I
think it needs to be, really clear because language is important. So.
Yeah. No, I think this raises a very important point, and I think I would want to give this to you, Tanya. I mean, we talk about silos and integration. I mean, what is your point of view? Mark says it's obviously that is almost like a separate function. There is an additional need to pull the information together and to then formulate it in a way that it is appropriate, right? So how would you react to that statement?
I think actually, from a business perspective, it's irrelevant, as long as it's communicated in a way that the public will understand it. And that's probably not the answer that you would want to hear.
Because who's the priesthood that's guarding the gate here? That's the question.
And that's totally fair. So we're looking at it from a different perspective, but if the intention is to bring a piece of information to the public so that the public can have access to it and for the betterment of the public, then the communicator is less important than what's being communicated.
Yeah, so we've got Carl here, or do you go first?
Yeah, and as was pointed out earlier, when we communicate to the general public, it's in language they can understand. But that's not our only publication, which is common for disciplines to have a more general organ as well as the main journal.
Yeah.
And I think we probably understand that.
Yeah. Jörg, just give Carl first the word.
Yeah, Karsten, so my question is, with the three issues being there, the first is clearly the SSE is that forum, and presumably we come here to learn about those ideas and draw conclusions for ourselves. So it seems to me the SSE has always had a policy of not subscribing to anything. And so we come here for that, and obviously people want to communicate their stories, and the forum provides that, and anyone who is interested is welcome to come. And so I think those are all there, but it's just whether or not the society wants to take a formal position, and I think that ever since its founding has been the thing the society has chosen not to do, because to make sure the forum is free and open.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Jörg, have you got the mic? No. Phil, could you just get the mic to Jörg, please?
Okay. A couple of comments. First, about drawing relevant conclusions. The SSE does not have a mind. It does not have an identity. It is not a person. It is an organization. Anybody drawing relevant conclusions within the society is presumably a member of the society. Our individual researchers, I think, pretty much always draw relevant conclusions from their own research, and usually publish them as part of the same articles in which they're describing the research. But there is, I think, rarely consensus about the conclusions. Maybe there is sometimes, maybe it would be good to institute some sort of regular society-wide review of, well, hey, here's the recent research in topic thus and so, and what the researchers have said about it. What's the sense of the society about these ideas? But the other thing is, and it relates to the fact that there will probably be a lot of issues at any given time on which we do not have consensus, and that's communicating in general, in common terms to the general public. There's a large part of the general public that does not like and does not want the kind of reasoning and information that is dealt with in the sciences. Some years ago, a member of the US Congress expressed a demand that the government find some one-armed scientists, as he put it, who are incapable of saying, on the other hand.
Okay.
But science is about ambiguity and conditional, provisional, temporary understandings. And there are a lot of people in the general public who absolutely hate that and can't deal with it at all, no matter how it's expressed.
Yeah, and I think we have a challenge here, and I'm totally with you. But this is the point. It doesn't really. You see, we are then, if we can't fix that problem, if we can't actually somehow get a grip on that particular problem, that we need to drive consensus somehow. And it's not in the level of detail that you are dealing with on a daily basis. It's in the level of detail that Tanya and I basically need to know it. Right? This is probably a different kind of aggregation of information. It's not really down in the trenches where you need to actually really find out whether this is the better method or that, but it's on a higher level. So I think we have a challenge here, because we want the SSE to do this, But then on the other hand, we say, we can't do it. And we have got a market there. We've got a Tanya and a Carsten there who basically say, it would be really good if we could get that. Right? So all I'm saying is, I think we have an issue here where we say we want to do something, but on the other hand, we feel incapable of doing something. Sorry.
First, I'd like to, I appreciate the fact that York now agrees with what I said this morning.
Could you just speak up a bit more? Sorry, Iman, just a bit louder.
It's on.
It's on.
Is it on?
Yeah.
It's on. There you go. Second, you're the business person. Who's going to pay for that? Third, we already have a venue for communicating with the public, which is Edge Science, and Patrick can certainly say a lot more about that than I can, but from what I understand, we simply have problems of getting people writing anything for them. So there seems to be insufficient energy or ability or whatever, especially since nobody's getting paid to do it, to actually communicate with the public. And the final point, you're kind of making it sound as though you can get academics and scientists to do something like in a group or en masse or agree to something. Like, have you ever tried herding cats? That's the usual expression for trying to understand, as a senior university administrator will say, yeah, it's like herding cats. You know how well you can herd cats? Not very well. So, I mean, that's what we're up against.
Believe me, we have got cats in business as well. But I take your point. We have cats, right? We have got cats.
One thing that I think science is, or as a general rule, scientists have a great deal of difficulty with, is saying, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the reasons why the public has a certain disregard for them. But what would be so wrong with this society coming out and honestly saying, we don't know, but here are a couple of different perspectives. What if we could present not a consensus, but to present the different points of an argument, maybe in Edge Science, maybe in JSE, to the public, and this way we would also get it beyond the language barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And just come out and say, listen, this is a topic that's under discussion. It is a controversial one. We don't know the answer, but we think it's something that's worth exploring.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that indication of some humility might actually be to our advantage in the public regard.
Yeah. No, this is... Yeah.
And I think that requires a little bit of education of the public, because a lot of times I get asked the question, well, what do you believe? Well, that's not my job. Here's what I have found, here's the data, here are the conclusions. We don't do that. So I think that would require a little bit of education to go, well, what we don't do is say, this is what it is.
Yes.
That could be a good topic for the first.
Sure.
Yeah.
What's the difference between believing and knowing?
All right. Oh, we have an extreme vote over there. Sorry. Go ahead.
I think Imat put out some very good points and defined some of the problems we face very clearly.
Yeah.
And for me, they're challenges.
Yeah.
These are things we have to look to. How can we get past them?
Totally
how
agree.
can we start to communicate with people in a more wide way? And how do we get people to cooperate together to do this? Now, one of the things that I think you were speaking about this morning is trying to have a common message.
Mm-hmm.
And having a single message. And if we all just use that message, I've seen it work in politics dramatically. If we all just used the same message and kept it very simple, it would start to penetrate into other markets.
Yes.
And we might be able to get through to
Yes.
media.
I think from a receiver's point of view, that is exactly what Tanya and others would look for, right? It's not the details. It's just really some core messages, some principal statements. It's not more. And then there is one last thing I would want to pick up from Iman's comment. That is who pays for that? And I would want to give that question to Tanya, because she has got the money.
Certainly not me. I think the opportunities for funding from corporations is enormous. The problem is that we don't know who to talk to. We don't know who needs funding. We don't know what you need funding for. Businesses are really good at asking for things. Start asking everybody.
Yeah. So this is an interesting thing, because as soon as we would define what we want to work upon, then probably there is a support, right? Probably there is a support from a point of view of integrating it as well. I mean, yeah, it might need money, it might need funding, but we have not said that that is not available. I think there are companies around, and there are probably also rich people around who just want to sort of help the society by pulling things together. So, Annalisa.
Hi. I've been holding this mic for a while, so I'm glad
sorry,
to use
I didn't spot you.
So I would like to suggest a softer alternative to drawing relevant conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine it instead as disseminating responsible information.
Mm-hmm.
And let me give you an example. For instance, in the field of parapsychology, we have phenomena such as near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences. Now, the jury is still out on the mechanisms behind these things, whether they are as people experience them, and et cetera. But there's also a wide culture, there's a wide array of people who have these experiences. And often we'll turn to the PA, for instance, with what's happening, what's going on.
Yeah.
And, to not say anything at all is a disservice, because even though we haven't reached a relevant conclusion, there's still some really good information.
Yes.
Some information that is better than information from other resources, for instance.
Yes.
Okay. And then the second thing, I want to comment on this idea of the general public. I really don't think there's such a thing. It belongs in the same mythical category with objectivity and unicorns.
Unicorns. There are a lot of unicorns in the general public, I hear.
I think one thing that we need to make sure that we, include is not only do we kind of just communicate our research and the things that we're doing, but kind of make it clear of what the research could bring, and I know a lot of us are engineers here, and a lot of us have ideas on what these things could do. And I think that would bring the public's attention and, the needs of, like what we were talking about early, education, healthcare, and that would really spark their attention. If we had, hey, here's what we found, we still don't know, but if we did know, then this is what could happen.
Interesting, yeah. So it's not to establish something as a actual fact or whatever, but to say, okay, this is interesting news. Right, and probably you should leave it up to the businesses or to whoever to decide. I mean, if you put things in front of them, the conclusion drawing in terms of whether someone actually believes it or not is a subjective thing, like Annalisa says, from my point of view. Right, it's all subjective.
Yeah, and even engineers, who aren't in our community, who are like, oh, wait, I could do something with that.
Yeah, I'd like to take a last comment. Would you?
Oh, wow.
Sorry, it's just in terms of timing.
Yeah. So I've got 17 comments that are lined up.
All right.
No.
Pick the most relevant one.
Well, they're all actually combined, and there weren't 17. So I had the same reaction to many of the comments that came up, and I found myself staring more at the description of this, and particularly it draws relevant conclusions. But something to think about is it doesn't say drawing the one canonical relevant conclusion. And what helped me understand this was to reread that sentence and say, the Society for Scientific Exploration, whoa, that's us, right? So another way of reading this, and it would be interesting to see how the votes change, is I will participate in a critical forum for sharing original research and so forth. I will draw relevant conclusions based on converging evidence as seen, and I will communicate those in common terms to the general public. And all of a sudden now we as a community are asking ourselves, are we going to take responsibility for doing these things? Are we actually buying into this by saying, part of the SSE, I'm going to be that impetus for change, right? And it'd be interesting to see how many people are actually, I thought it was the SSE that was going to, you guys, somebody else is going to do that, right? I'm just going to come to the meeting. No, because we are that community, and it really will change the way that we look at this and put these other comments in perspective. And then I'm going to sneak in one more, which is just a question back to something that Tanya raised, which is, would the commercial sector if it turned out that all of this stuff really pointed to the idea that the betterment of society comes down to spending a lot less money on crap, would money still be there?
Would money still be there, or would the crap still be there?
I meant would the money still be there to fund this research if there wasn't a profit motive, or in fact, if it was reversed, if in fact it turned out that there was an anti-profit motive. Because that's a distinct possibility out of all of this, which is we should rise above materialism and the idea that buying things is going to make us happy. That actually may not be in the best interest of all the people who have the money and they want to invest, because they're in it for a profit. Now, not all commercial sector is in it for a profit. So, I'm not trying to draw a conclusion there.
I mean, I think in a utopian world, I think the right companies would still be there.
And
I think the others would fall away.
I think this is the case, because I think there are more and more companies showing that they have also this kind of mindset, that they are not only putting profit. I mean, we had this thing in the business which was called single bottom line versus triple bottom line. So single bottom line was only profit, and triple bottom line is people, profit, and planet, right? So there are these kind of things, and I think it's a process. It's gradually shifting towards that direction. And one could say, okay, if this hasn't shifted, we can't do anything about it. Or we could take an attitude which basically says, we will support the shift by what we do, right? And with that, because I'm seriously concerned that this building is going to collapse in 30 seconds.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Information is a product.
Oh yeah, information is a product. Absolutely.
That's all. Okay, before the thunder gets us.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. It's highly appreciated. I hope you basically got something out of the conversations. Bill is going to put his statistics hat into this and see whether he can make some sense out of non-statistically relevant data. I wish you a very nice evening, and I'm looking forward to see you guys all tomorrow for the next day of the session. Have a nice evening. Thank you.